If you're here right now, I need to let you know that I definitely appreciate you because the title of this video told you exactly what it's about and exactly who it's for, and you clicked anyways. And so that tells me some things about you. One, even though they're probably all grown up, you clearly care about your children. And second, you care about their financial future, which in my experience means that you probably did a pretty good job taking care of your own money. Because people who are still worried about their own money rarely have the capacity to worry about their kids or anybody else. So if you're here, you've probably earned some peace of mind, which is exactly why I want to have a quick chat. As you can imagine, I have parents, and I also have hundreds of clients that are parents, and many other adult children are my clients as well. So I have it on pretty good authority that there tends to be a bit of a schism or a gap between parents and their adult children on how they should best handle money. The general vibe being is that kids just aren't listening to their parents. Parents oftentimes feel like their kids aren't taking advantage to some of the tools that are available to them. I can't count how many times I've heard, if they just did this, then this would happen. If they just saved like I did, or if they just spent their money a little bit differently. Basically, they just need to change what they're doing. It's a behavior problem. The assumption being is, I did it, so they should be able to do it. And hey, that sounds reasonable, but an assumption is only as good as the context behind it. So let me give you some context. First, an interesting fact. So the Department of Labor tracks a metric called worker productivity. It's complicated wording for a very simple concept. Worker productivity is simply the value of the stuff that a worker creates in an hour. So if I work in a bread factory and in an hour I make 10 loaves of bread, the value of that 10 loaves is my worker productivity. Today, worker productivity is dramatically higher than previous generations, 90% higher. So my dad was making 10 loaves of bread an hour, I'm making 19. Now I could assume that this increase in productivity is a result of specific behavior or specific actions that myself and my peers are taking. But it would be sort of ridiculous to claim that, wouldn't it? Because it completely ignores the circumstances. Yeah, I deserve some credit, but I also have the internet when my dad had pencil and paper. So hopefully what I'm saying makes a lot of sense because that same logic runs in the other direction. Many of you worked very hard and made very responsible and sound decisions through some really difficult circumstances. And that absolutely played a role in the financial stability and the financial situation that you have today. And it's easy and natural to focus on the things that you did, the things that you could control, and then want to pass that information on to people that you love. But we have to be honest. It's flawed to assume that your wealth today was primarily the product of your behavior without acknowledging the specific circumstances it happened in. And there are several circumstances worth naming, but I only need three: housing, healthcare, and education. The three pillars of wealth are in a dramatically different circumstance today than they were a generation ago. For housing, it used to be that the cost of housing was roughly 3.5 times median income. Today, it's closer to five. College today takes about 3.5 times more labor to afford. I think we all know that the cost of healthcare has dramatically risen relative to average wages, but more importantly, the amount of health plans that are paid for fully by the employer are dramatically less than they were generations ago. Housing, education, and healthcare, your biggest asset, your earning power, and the protection from losing both are in a dramatically different world today than they were a generation ago. In my experience, those three things are a pillar of financial success. If those three things are within reach, then the wealth kind of follows on its own a lot of times. And so in generations prior, those three things were not only within reach, there was actually money left over to save. And many of you did save. You invested and you made smart, prudent financial decisions with your money, picking stocks, mutual funds, bonds. And that counts. You made those decisions. But what also counts is that those investments, it went on to experience the greatest period of market growth in the history of the human civilization. So let's be clear on what we've established here. Behavior matters, choices matter, but the conditions that those choices are made in end up being decisive. The same discipline, the same decision, the same choices that worked a generation ago are certainly still available to anyone. What's no longer available is the environment that those choices were made in. So it's important that we better understand the conditions today. So, how do we describe that? But what we know, like I said earlier, that worker productivity, that the amount of bread that my generation is producing in an hour is higher than ever. But we also know that what we're being paid for that is landing far behind that number. And I'm not the first person to talk about this. Economists have studied it and measured it. It's called the productivity pay gap. And the finding is that if the pay had kept pace with worker productivity in the same way that it did in previous generations, then workers today would be making roughly $16.40 an hour more. That's roughly $2,800 a month. And that's not even accounting for the changes in housing, education, and healthcare. Just in itself, $2,800 a month. Think about that significance for a second. $2,800 a month comes out to about $34,000 a year. So, what I think is interesting is that when I hear that number, $34,000 a year, $2,800 a month, that's about what people my age are paying for housing, healthcare, and education. So, to me, that's the gap between previous generations and today: housing, healthcare, and education. And I don't think I need to convince you that those are essential things for building wealth, because you already know that they are essential. You have provided them to your kids their entire lives when they couldn't afford it. You have provided their education. You provided their housing. You provided their health care. Newsflash, though, is that they still can't afford them. What's interesting is that you who can afford them, likely, probably you. Did you know that 70% of the wealth in this country is held by people who are over the age 55? 70%. So you're in the best position that you've ever been, likely, to provide those things. And so for me, there's only really one way to go about providing those things today. Number one, you need to make sure that everything that you worked for in terms of your retirement goals or financial goals are fully taken care of. Fortunately, there's people like me or professionals like me whose full-time job is to identify those goals, figure out how much it's going to cost, and make sure that those are going to be funded. If we're successful, there's money going to be left over, and we're able to define that. And that is the money that you can develop a strategy with to help support your children's housing, healthcare, and education. And that support can take a variety of shapes. I know parents that are paying their health insurance premiums for their kids. I know parents that are covering their deductibles. I know parents that are providing down payment assistance. Those are the behaviors today that will actually have a financial impact in the lives of your adult children.